Om Tat Sat. My humble prostrations to the all-pervading Brahman or God, to my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananji Maharaj, to sage Narada and all the sages and saints, and to each of you divine soul watching today's satsang. So today we will continue. We are studying the scripture Narada Bhakti Sutras, and we are on the introduction stage, and we are today continuing our homage and respects to Sage Narada, who is the author of this holy scripture. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananji Maharaj, and narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started. So in addition, we talked about Sage Narada yesterday, how he was a Gandharva, and then how he was cursed, and then he was born in a low caste family, very poor, but yet he had a lot of devotion, and we had talked about that in yesterday's video, Satsang, and today we will continue the journey that in addition to being the chief exponent of Bhakti Yoga, so he brought devotion to the forefront. Sage Narada, in addition to the Bhakti, is also a great teacher of Vedanta Yoga, which is meditation. So he also knows all that art of going beyond through the meditational practice. And then he was also very expert adept in medicine, music, and various other branches of knowledge. So these sages and saints have everything of the para and apara. Para is higher, apara is lower. So he was very well rounded, in other words, or I should say he is very well rounded, because even though invisible, he is still called a Chiranjeevi, which means he is still in form, he is still in subtle form with us here. It was Narada who inspired sage Vyasa to write the classical devotional work Srimad Bhagavad Puran. Sage Vyasa, as you know, he wrote Mahabharata, he wrote all the Vedas and divided them into 4 parts. He wrote many scriptures, and yet he was not happy. So then Sage Narada guided him to write something like Srimad Bhagavata Purana in a devotional context, because Ved Vyasji was very logic oriented, very scholarly. So all his works were very scholarly and very intellectual based, but that's why he was not finding the release of his emotional energy. And when Narada guided him to write about Bhagavad Puran, glories of Krishna, Radha, and devotion, that excited Sage Ved Vyas greatly, and he was in his quite an old age when he wrote this. So he brought his full experience, and Bhagavad Puran became the 5th Veda. It's so popular that even today people do Bhagavad Purana. You can see it on YouTube if you would like, but there are people do it for weeks together, sometimes months together, to study this holy scripture. It was written by Ved Vyas, but again it was inspired by Sage Narada because of his guidance. So Sage Vyasa wrote it, and Narada also inspired Sage Valmiki, who wrote Ramayana, as you all know, the great epic scripture, Ramayana and Mahabharata. So both of those, Narada had a role to play in these wonderful scriptures, guiding these authors to take up these enormous projects. It is also interesting that in many stories of the Puranas, Sage Narada is depicted not only as a talebearer, but also one who creates quarrels and misunderstanding among others. Most of you who know Sage Narada, a lot of people misunderstand him, and they say, why does he make people fight or create conflict or confusion all the time? But the deeper meaning is that he is taking people out of their comfort zone, so some good can come out of that action, something spiritual can come out of that action. And if you think deeply about it, that is the essence of satsanga. Satsanga is supposed to bring you into good association, even though your present situation may be shaken up and make you uncomfortable for a few moments. But if that does not occur, you will continue to go downhill. So Narada is also considered one of the 24 incarnations of Lord Vishnu. That is his role, very important role in our Sanatan Dharma scriptures. The Mahabharata describes him as a treasure house of all excellent qualities. In Skanda Purana, there occurs a hymn in praise of Sage Narada listing these great qualities. So he who proceeded from Brahma, who is free of egoism, who is well versed in the scripture. Adorations to that divine sage Narada. So please, you also all dedicate and do humble prostrations to his lotus feet to get his blessings, so we can get this quality of devotion that we are all trying to enhance. He who is free of mental agitation, anger, fickle-mindedness, and fear. He who is prompted in performing his duties, adorations to him. So we adore him and we seek his blessings. He who does not utter a false word because of desire and greed. See, sages and saints, they do not want anything for themselves. Who is adored by the entire creation, adorations to him. He who is the knower of the secrets of the mystic path, who is endowed with the power of knowledge and is the master of his senses. Adorations to him. So this is an adoration to Sage Narada, and we are reading the highlights of these wonderful blessings and praises that has been so graciously explained by our worshipful Gurudev. He who is the embodiment of simplicity, who is endowed with the treasure of spiritual qualities, who is cheerful, spiritually effulgent, and is ever eager to promote the good in all. Adorations to him. He who is untouched by the sins of the world, who follows the path of righteousness, who delights in telling mystic stories of scriptures, and who is never deluded by lust, greed, and anger. I offer my adorations to him. He who is ever detached from the world, and whose mind is free of all doubts, who does not spend a single moment in vain, who is never contented with the experience of samadhi, who is ever vigilant and reflective, I offer my adorations to him. That is the glory of the sage. He whose intellect is ever steady, who is balanced in pleasure and pain, gain and loss, adorations to him. He who is endowed with all excellent qualities, who is the knower of the secrets of righteousness, who is absolutely fearless, adorations to him. And as we discussed before, Sage Narada is a Chiranjeevi. Chiranjeevi means somebody who is continuing to live perpetually, who chooses to live for everlasting time in order to bring satsanga to the humans of this mortal world. So what wonderful grace we have of so many sages and saints, and that these are the qualities we should also try to imbibe, that we have just praised Sage Narada for. For that is true satsanga, to become Sage Narada, to become merge into him, merge into Vishnu, merge into our deity. Advanced aspirants or yogis are able to commune with Sage Narada and receive his instructions. So as we advance on the path and we in our meditation session, we can even get his direct blessings. He can show up in that form and give us whatever is needed, but we have to achieve that qualification to get to that state. Sage Narada gives the essence of his teachings and spiritual experiences here in his Bhakti Sutras. So how blessed we are and how thankful we are to him for writing these sutras as a blessing to all of us, and how thankful we are to our Guru who has taken the time and the effort to convert all these complex sutras into simple English, so we can simpletons like you and I can enjoy the depth of these, which form a priceless treasure for those who seek union with God through divine love. So that is the blessing of these sutras and these scriptures. These sutras are not expressions of speculation. They are founded on experience, and therefore their authenticity is unchallenged. So therefore this is the one beautiful thing that the Sanatan Dharma, the sages and saints bring to humanity. Whatever they tell us, whether it's self-realization, their discipline, or working on purity, that is through their own personal experience. They are not just reading a book. So again, as we always say, these are not intellectual exercises only. We have to practically experience it. Just like to fulfill our hunger, we have to eat. Short of that, it doesn't work. Just looking at a picture won't serve us, won't fill our bellies. We have to actually eat. So therefore, the sages and saints understood that, and they are giving you that recipe of how to fill your belly through this knowledge, through this technique. And once we follow it, we will experience it also. So therefore, that is the one unique contribution. It's not just like reading a scripture like a parrot or orating it. It is actually living it, and therein lies the radiance, the brilliance, the enjoyment, the happiness that comes. Sage Narada continues to live and move in the spirit of his own teachings, and it is these very teachings that are presented in this book. So again, we prostrate to Sage Narada, and this is Swami Nikhilananda. I will see you in tomorrow's video, and then we will be actually starting the holy chapters of the sutras. We'll start with chapter 1 tomorrow. Hari Om Tat Sat.